Hello, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Seb.
And I'm Elsie.
So how are you doing today, Elsie?
I'm doing okay. What about you?
I'm okay. I'm a bit stressed because I left my keys at home again today. So I need to work out how I can get home. I do that all the time. I'm a really forgetful person.
So you are a forgetful person just like me.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I'm very disorganized and I forget everything.
I forget my phone at home. I forget my coat at home. I forget my key at home all the time.
So we could also say that you're kind of absent-minded, right?
Absent-minded. Yeah, right. You can say that.
Yeah, absent just means not there, and minded obviously is your mind. So if you're absent-minded, you're frequently not present. You're not thinking about where you are, you know? So you might... 有点在神游的感觉，不知道飘到哪边去了。Exactly. So absent-minded. So we're absent-minded people, I guess. That's something that we're struggling with. But absent-minded and forgetfulness, they're not always the same thing, are they? No. So like absent-mindedness normally isn't that serious a thing. I mean, it can get you in trouble. It can make you forget your homework. But normally we just use it to talk about day-to-day things. But when people are very forgetful, that can cause a lot of day-to-day problems. And it can actually be a sign of some more serious mental conditions.
Right. And we're going to talk about that serious mental condition or disease.
Yes, we are. We're going to be talking about, it's more of a symptom, actually, a 病状, than a disease. But we're going to begin today's translation topic by talking about memory decline. So let's get straight into it. So the first sentence we're translating today is, people tend to think that memory decline is only related to aging.
这边呢，我们要翻译的中文是人们往往认为记忆力衰退只与老化有关。
That certainly makes sense to me. We often talk about people becoming senile in old age. Senile is an adjective that means suffering from any condition that is related to very old age, such as memory loss or memory failure or arthritis. That's when you have very stiff and painful joints. Say your fingers, for example, might be very painful. We don't tend to use senile a lot outside of medical or care situations, though, because if you call someone senile, it's actually quite hurtful. It can make them quite upset. So what do you think, Elsie? Do you agree senility is the main cause of memory loss, or do you think it could be something else?
I think it's probably the most common cause. However, there are other causes too, right?
We're actually going to get into those other causes in our second sentence.
That's right.
But yes, we often, when we're talking about memory decline, certainly for me, I normally think about Alzheimer's, which is a condition or disease that you get in the later stages of your life. Normally in the later stages of your life.
Normally.
You can get it younger, where your brain basically starts to decay or it starts to shrink, I guess we should say. And that causes you to forget things and ultimately you lose most of your functions. So it's a very, very serious disease. But there are other causes as well, and we're going to be talking about those in a minute. Let's firstly look at the grammar and the translation practices we can use in this first sentence. So what do we need to know about the tense?
那这边呢，我们在讲的是一个事实，所以呢，我们要用到的是现在简单式来描述这个事实哦。然后呢，中文里面有往往，也就是倾向于、易于的意思，可以翻作什么呢？我们可以说 tend to 后面加一个原形动词，或者是 have a tendency to 加上原形动词，或者是 be inclined to。后面加原形动词，还有就是 be apt to, be prone to, 或是 be likely to， 有好多的用法哈。那这边呢，我们先给同学们一个例句咯。People tend to become less active and more settled as they get older， 代表人们变老的时候啊，他们往往会变得比较不爱运动，还有更不想改变。那这边要提醒同学们的是呢，不要跟 intend to 来混淆咯，因为 intend to do something 代表的是有意打算要做某事。
Exactly. Tend to really means make a habit of something or do someone because you're used to it or because you prefer it. So, for example, English speakers tend to say thank you when you do them a favor. Right, because when we grow up, our parents tell us we should say thank you when somebody does us a favor. So people are normally used to doing this, so they tend to do this. They often do this. Another similar phrase we could use is be inclined to. Now, when we're talking about being inclined to do something, that phrase is a little bit more about preference, about what you like to do, and often what you like to do naturally. So not something you would make a conscious decision to do, but an inclination is basically the natural way you tend to behave or have opinions about things. So, for example, people who have just given up smoking are often inclined to put pens in between their fingers when they want a cigarette. Okay, so what we're saying there is the people who used to smoke are used to having something in between their fingers when they smoke, obviously. So when they stop smoking, they still do that action without thinking because they're used to having a cigarette. Now, a third phrase, which is similar we could look at, is be partial to. So to be partial to something is to enjoy it. And this one is much more about your preference, about what you personally like. So if you're partial to do something, then you enjoy doing it when you get the chance. For example, I'm partial to a run by the riverside on weekends. So look at the difference between this sentence and the sentence about smokers. In this sentence, we're talking about something that the person chooses to do with their free time. Whereas when we're talking about inclined to do something, we're talking about something that people do without thinking. Okay, so there's the slight difference between those two phrases.
好，再来呢，我们要看到的是记忆力衰退该怎么说。那虽然英文里面有许多意思是衰退的字，可是在表达记忆力衰退的时候，惯用的是 decline， 才可以带出逐渐下降、衰弱。Memory decline 代表就是记忆衰退。那另外呢，如果要表示记忆力退化，我们呢可以用 failing 这个字，意思就是衰退中的、逐渐衰弱的。
Exactly. So you just pointed out that thing about decline, about memory decline. And so decline, I don't know if you've noticed, it has this prefix D in it, which basically means to get smaller or get worse or undo. So often when you see the letters D-E at the beginning of a word, it's going to have a relation to one of those things, getting smaller, getting worse, or undoing. So for example, a decline as well as being getting worse can also mean going downhill. It can be a slope that goes downhill, a decline. And the opposite of that would be an incline, which is a slope that goes uphill. Now, some similar words to decline that we can look at include deterioration, which again uses the D-E, and that means to fall apart quickly over time. So we can use this to talk about someone's health, or we can use it to talk about the condition of an object. So we could say, Rachel's mental health deteriorated after her husband passed away. Or we could also say, this house is in a state of deterioration. So in one, we're talking about health, and in the other one, we're talking about the state of a building. And another one is decay. So again, we're using this D-E, and that is the process of rotting, often after death. So we could say that the body had begun to decay, for example. A dead body decayed. Or we could also talk about, again, about objects kind of getting a lot worse. So the old wood beams in the roof have decayed and need to be replaced.
好，再来呢，我们看到与点点点有关，除了 be related to 之外呢，也可以译作be connected to 或者是 be linked to。那这三个片语之后呢，常接名词、名词片语或动名词、动名词片语，表示与主词相关的事物。So for example, some people think the type of food we enjoy is related to our ethnic background. 有些人认为我们喜欢的食物类型与我们的种族背景有关。OK， 再来呢，我们看到老化或是变老该怎么样说？我们可以用 growing old 或是 getting old 来表示。那另外呢，因为 age 当动词的时候啊，就有衰老的意思，所以呢，也可以用它衍生出来的名词 aging 来表示老化的过程。So for example, Kelly is so afraid of aging that she gets plastic surgery to keep herself looking young. Kelly 是如此担心老化，以至于呢，她去接受整形手术，让自己看起来年轻一些。
Right, exactly. So aging, is just the process of getting old, and you'll often see on some beauty and skincare products the phrase anti-aging, which just means to prevent aging or to slow the appearance of aging. So obviously it doesn't stop you getting older, but it might help you stay looking young, basically. That's what anti-aging things do. So our second sentence goes into the other reasons that you might have memory problems. However, doctors warn that habitually staying up late and unbalanced diets are the main reasons for a failing memory. So what this sentence is saying is that aging is not necessarily what causes your memory to fail. It could be other things, what food you're eating and what your sleep routine is like.
Yeah, or your lifestyle.
Your lifestyle, exactly.
那这边的中文是呢，然而医师警告，习惯性熬夜或是呢不均衡的饮食才是记忆力退化的元凶。
So I think let's go straight into the grammar and the vocabulary for this one.
好的，那这边呢一样是个事实，所以我们要用现在简单式描述事实。习惯性，我们这边可以用到副词 habitually。好，那它是名词 habit 的衍生字，表示呢因习惯而一贯地不断地重复做某件事。那在这边呢也可以用 often, regularly 或是 frequently 这些频率副词来代替哦。那给同学们一个例句了 Gary habitually consumes energy drinks to keep himself awake during school hours. 代表 Gary 这个人习惯性喝能量饮料，来让自己在学校的时间保持清醒。
Exactly. So we talked about tendency earlier, and when we do something habitually, we do it normally because we're used to it. So often without thinking, when we're talking about doing something habitually, we might just do it, we might just find ourselves doing it without realizing. When we make a habit of something, though, we start doing something frequently or by routine. So here's two examples. We can actually use make a habit in a positive way and a negative way. So the positive one would be, I'm trying to make a habit of exercising 3 times a week. I'm trying to regularly exercise 3 times a week all the time. And a negative one would be, don't make a habit of handing in your homework late. Your grades will suffer. Okay, so in this one, it's more like a warning. It implies that the listener has handed in their homework late before, and they're doing it multiple times now. And so someone is saying, don't keep doing this. Don't do this all the time, or your grades will get worse.
OK， 再来呢，我们要表示不均衡的饮食，可以用 balance 这个字。那 balance 它有2个带有否定语义的衍生字，一个是 imbalance， 一个是 unbalance。那需要特别注意的是 imbalance 它是名词，表示不均衡、失调。那 unbalance 它是动词哦，表示使不均衡、使失调。那要把它变成形容词，表示不均衡的时候，字尾要加上 d， 变成一个过去分词 unbalanced， 当形容词用。So for example, Jake's life is unbalanced as he often spends all his waking hours working. Jack 的生活失调，因为他醒着的时间通常都在工作。
Okay, so here obviously we're using it unbalanced in the context of an unbalanced diet. And that is basically a diet, or the things that you eat, if what you're eating has bad nutrition. Now, nutrition is the balance of different minerals and other things in your food. So if you have good nutrition, or your food has good nutrition, then that means that there are lots of good minerals, lots of good elements in there to keep you healthy. It's healthy eating. Meanwhile, bad nutrition might consist of things like empty calories. So, for example, potato chips are not very nutritious. They have bad nutrition because there's not a lot in there which is good for your body. It's mostly salt and oil. Okay, so we've also got this word main reasons and principal causes.
元凶就是主要原因，所以我们可以用 main reasons 或是 principal causes 来表示。但是要留意的是呢 principal 要拼对。好，我们这边的 principal 是 principal principal 代表形容词主要的。好，不要把它拼成 ple 结尾的，因为 ple 结尾的是名词，代表原则。
Exactly. All right, let's take a break here and then we'll return with our second translation. Okay, so we're taking a jump now from health to technology, and we're going to be talking about probably one of the biggest tech companies that there is right now. And I was going to call it Facebook, but that's not its name anymore, is it? It changed its name.
Right, it's not Facebook anymore, it's Meta.
Meta. So, Meta, very big sounding name. We often use Meta actually in English. Before this company name appeared, we used Meta to describe when somebody was talking about very big ideas about the universe or big ideas about, what it means to be alive, things like that. That's very meta. So the sentence reads, last October, Facebook officially changed its name to Meta in an attempt to reverse the decline in young users by establishing a virtual space.
那这一句的中文是呢，去年10月 Facebook 正式改名为 Meta， 试图呢透过打造虚拟空间扭转年轻用户的下滑。So a lot of young people are not using Facebook any longer.
It's true. It's very true. In fact, I think, this is interesting for us because, when I was younger, I think when we were both younger, Facebook was what we used mostly to communicate, right? Especially between maybe 2008 and 2014. I think Facebook was the main social media platform that everyone used. There's no TikTok. Not many people used Instagram. So obviously Facebook is everywhere now, but one thing that it's struggled to do for the last maybe 8 years or so is keep young people interested in it. I remember as early as 2016, there were news articles about how Facebook was not able to attract as many young people anymore, and most of the growth in numbers, most of the increasing numbers of Facebook users were older people, particularly middle-aged people and elderly people. So just recently, actually, The Verge, which is a tech magazine, published that teenage users of the Facebook app in the US had declined by 13% since 2019, so that's in a 2-year period, and were projected to drop 45% over the next 2 years. So that means they're expected to go down by almost half in the next 2 years. So young people are really not that interested in Facebook anymore, it seems. So, Elsie, has your Facebook use changed? Do you use it as much as you used to?
No, I seldom use Facebook or Facebook Messenger now. I use Instagram more, but I don't use TikTok.
I see.
Yeah,
TikTok, I'm not on TikTok at the moment, actually. It's more because I think I use Instagram too much. I don't want to have another social media account.
Right, and I hardly post anything on Facebook anymore. Normally, I just use it for online shopping.
Yeah, actually, when I was preparing for this, I checked my Facebook wall to see the last time I posted something.
When was that?
And I think I posted something in June 2021 or July 2021. I posted something. But yeah, so it's been a long time since we've posted anything. I think I use Messenger sometimes to talk to people. And maybe I check Facebook for events if I want to find something to do in Taipei.
And you know what? We're not even Facebook friends.
We're not, no.
We're not.
I have you on online, and I think I have you on Instagram, but I've never seen you on Facebook.
Right?
What's the point? Nobody talks on Facebook anymore. So anyway, Facebook is trying to change this. We're talking about Facebook is attempting or making an attempt to reverse this decline. So what does this phrase mean, Elsie?
好，不过呢，首先我们要先知道的是时态啊，我们要用过去简单式。描述这个过去发生的事情。那试图的部分呢，我们可以说 in an attempt to do something. Attempt 它可以当作名词，也可以当作动词。名词的 attempt 除了前述的用法之外啊，常见的还有 an attempt at 后面加上名词，或者是 an attempt to 后面加上原形动词。还有一个就是 make an attempt at 后面加上 VING 或者是名词。那当动词用的时候啊，常见的用法是 attempt to 加上原形动词或者是名词。那这边给同学们一个例句哦。In an attempt to look cool, Sarah tried a very difficult skateboard trick and got hurt. 为了试图要让自己看起来很酷， Sarah 尝试高难度滑板动作，结果受了伤。
Exactly. So when we attempt to do something, we're basically saying that someone is trying to do something difficult or that they might not succeed. So this sentence actually makes it sound like Facebook isn't naturally a platform that young adults would use. It's not, they're going to try and do something very difficult. They're going to try and make themselves interesting to people who aren't interested in them. Now, because attempt is a noun, we can modify it with adjectives. We can say that an attempt is good or bad by saying a successful or failed attempt. That is an attempt that was either worked or an attempt that didn't work. So, for example, most people have forgotten Google's failed attempt to make its own version of Facebook. I don't know if you remember that. That happened maybe 10, 11 years ago. Google tried to create its own version of Facebook.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Nobody used it. It was it completely failed. It was a failed attempt at making a social media.
好，再来我们要看到扭转怎么说呢？ Reverse 这个字啊，它是由字首 re 和字根 verse verse 所组成的。那 re 表示回复、往回。Verse 则是转变、转向。那这个字的原意是使反向倒着前进。那之后呢，衍生有使逆转、彻底改变的意思。那另外呢，除了当动词 reverse 也可以当作名词或是形容词哦，表示相反的、反面的。So, for example, what can the government do to reverse the trend of rising housing prices? 政府要怎么做才可以扭转持续高涨的房价趋势呢
Exactly. So recover can also be used as a verb, a transitive verb, to mean to get something back or to make something good again. So, for example, if the housing prices were falling, we could say, what can the government do to recover housing prices, to make them come back up again? So that's talking about a different problem, but it's making things better. And obviously, you'll remember that we can use recover also to mean to get better after something bad. So in that case, we would use it as recover from. So for example, how can we recover from the recession? All right. We've still got this word virtual, don't we? They're trying to create a virtual world.Right,
虚拟的我们就可以用 virtual 这个字，那这个字就常见于网络或是数位的情境当中，像是 virtual world、virtual tour 或者是 virtual reality， 也就是我们说的 VR 虚拟实境。
Exactly. So I think that, the virtual world that they're talking about is the metaverse, which is something which you might have heard about on the news. It's a very complicated thing to explain, but the metaverse is supposed to be a new version of the internet, a more immersive version of the internet where you can go inside and interact more with things digitally. So it's very interesting. I'm not sure exactly what Facebook's role will be in that at the moment, but that is definitely something which I think they're trying to do with Meta. Anyway, let's go on to our second sentence, which is not talking so much about the metaverse as it is about Facebook's troubled past. Okay, so our second sentence is, because Facebook has been ridden with scandals, many people suspected that the name change was done to shift the public's attention. Oh, okay, so it sounds very sneaky, doesn't it?
那这句的中文是呢，由于 Facebook 近来丑闻缠身，许多人怀疑改名是为了扭转大众的关注。So 这边的时态呢，我们要用的是前半句，使用现在完成式表示持续到今天的状态。因为说它近来丑闻缠身，好，所以我们要用现在完成式。那后半句呢，使用过去简单式描述过去发生的事情，也就是改名的动作是在过去发生的。好，所以呢，我们要用到过去简单式。那为了转移大众的关注是它的目的。好，所以我们首先呢要来看缠身这样子的说法要怎么样用英文表示。缠身就是充满着负面或是令人不愉快的事情。片语呢，我们可以用 be ridden with something。 用来表示呢某人或物受令人讨厌或令人嫌恶的事情所侵扰。那这个用法呢，也可以改写成名词 hyphen 再接上 ridden 的复合形容词。所以呢，我们可以这样子说 The country is ridden with debt, and that's why it has turned to foreign loans. 这句话呢，也可以说成 The debt-ridden country has turned to foreign loans. 代表这个国家负债累累，这就是为什么它要求助于外国贷款。
Exactly. So when we talk about something being ridden with something, we talk about it having a lot of a bad thing. So that could be physical. For example, that dog is ridden with fleas. Or it could be talking about a person. We could say that child is ridden with chicken pox. Okay. A similar word we could use is riddled with. So riddled. So when someone is riddled with something, they have a lot of disease, illness, or sickness. For example, the sailor was riddled with smallpox. The sailor had really bad smallpox. So they're ridden with scandals, right? They're ridden with scandals.
好，再来呢，丑闻我们就要用 scandal 这个字。那这个字呢，常用于媒体的情境当中，像是 political scandal、corruption scandal 或是 celebrity scandal 名人的丑闻。
Exactly. So what kinds of scandals are we talking about? Well, we could talk about I think the Cambridge Analytica, that's a difficult word to say, scandal was one of the biggest ones that Facebook was involved in, wasn't it? Do you remember what that was about, Elsie?
Actually, I don't really remember it. What was this scandal about?
It was where Facebook was selling private information
about
people to a research company, I believe.
Uh-huh.
So it was a big issue with privacy, and that was, I think, one of the first times people started to be very worried about what was happening to their information when they put it on Facebook. So that is one thing that people are very worried about when they think about Facebook. We could also say that Cambridge Analytica was scandalous. Now, scandalous is an adjective that means a fact or event that might cause a scandal or be damaging to someone's reputation. So, yes, it was a very scandalous time for Facebook.
那再来呢，我们要看到怀疑怎么表示。动词 suspect 跟 doubt 在中文呢当中都是说怀疑，不过两者在语义上其实有很明显的差别。suspect 表示怀疑某事是真实或是有可能发生的，那 doubt 则是因不确定某事的好坏或真实性而感到怀疑。那根据文意呢，我们这句话当中的怀疑要指的是许多人都认为改名另有目的，而非怀疑此目的的真实性，所以我们要用的是 suspect 而不是 doubt. So for example, I suspect my mother has been reading my journal, but I can't prove it. 我怀疑我妈妈有在看我的日记，但是我无法证明。那再给同学们一个例句哦。The teachers doubted that Jamie was the one who'd broken into the school. 老师怀疑 Jamie 不是强行闯入学校的人。
So it sounds that Jamie wasn't really much of a suspect. Now, suspect can be used as a noun as well, and a suspect is someone you think did something bad, but you haven't proved that they did it yet. So, for example, that man is a suspect in a murder. His trial is next week. Okay, so we don't know that he is the criminal. We're saying that he might be the criminal.
好，那再来呢？转移我们可以用 shift 表示改变焦点、立场或意见等等，也可以用 divert 或者是 distract 转移注意力来代替。
Exactly. Okay, it seems that's all the time we have for today's episode. So yeah, take a closer look at these sentences, and we will be joining you with more translation next month. For English Digest, I'm Seb.
I'm Elsie.
And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.